COVID-19 pandemic came to a head, many people from various walks of life were affected. They had to make plans in a very short period of time. One of these groups is post-secondary students. As they were feeling the pressure to complete their final assignments and study for their exams, their world was suddenly turned upside down. They had to adapt to a new way of learning. Some had to rearrange their housing plans. I'm Bill Visser, community producer for Council on Action here on Your TV Kingston. I asked my son to contact some of his schoolmates from Bay Ridge Secondary School in Kingston's West End so we could talk about their experiences and how it was affecting them. Joining me today are 6 students, 5 of which have just finished their first year and 1 who is entering his 4th year. First, we have Emily Fink-Jensen, who is studying theater at the University of Ottawa. Kai Moore, who is doing an honors in forensic science and anthropology at Trent University. Nick Nikopoulos, and I knew I got that one wrong, was entering his 4th year studying engineering at Queen's University. Liam Sweezy, who is taking teacher's education at Trent University, and Matthew Peaver, who is studying geography at Carleton University. And rounding it out is my son Ian, who is pursuing a degree in history at the University of Ottawa. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining me today. Emily, how did you find out about the pandemic, and what was the possible impact to you at school?
My friend had been telling me about it. She lives in London and goes to Western, where it hit London very fast. So she was just telling me about that, and that's when I realized it was getting really serious in Canada. As far as my education, I was in the middle of a lecture. We had just finished talking about one topic, and my teacher mentioned something about the pandemic, to which a student raised their hand and said, "Oh, the university just put an email out a couple minutes ago and they're turning the school online." So my professor just told us that the class was dismissed and he wouldn't be teaching us anymore because he didn't want to do any online lectures or anything. So
you actually lost the class?
Yeah, I completely, well, we still had the final exam for it, but we cut off the class halfway through the course, so we only got half of the course content. Okay. The rest of my classes did run online. The professors would post their lectures, and we would still have the tests, and we still had our exams. However, as a theater major, some of my classes are very hands-on and technical, so for my technical class, we had it cut off, and any practical things such as hanging lights and the tests we had on those, they got canceled as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. Kai, how about you? Similar experience, or was it a completely different thing?
Yes and no. So when I had first heard about the pandemic and things, it was just things that I was hearing on the news, and it wasn't really affecting me at that point. But then when it came to Canada and we had a confirmed case in Peterborough, which is where Trent University is, our university shut things down almost immediately, which was a little bit scary. You know, we were living in residence and we're being told that we have to leave where we've been living for the past year, like within the day kind of thing. So that was really stressful.
One day, that's a pretty fast turnaround.
Yeah.
Nick, how about you? You're studying at Queen's, so I'm presuming that you were staying at home. So
I was in a student house, but a lot less affected than people in residence. So luckily for me, all my housemates decided to stay in Kingston when this all came to light. So we were able to stay at the student house. But speaking to a lot of peers, I know a lot of people, student house also went home. So a lot of people were basically forced out of residence, as we've kind of already heard. And then a lot of other students, as soon as there were no lectures or anything really keeping them at campus, they just chose to go back home as soon as they found out everything was going to be done online. I actually found out that all of the things were closing down in a sort of interesting and different way. I was supposed to be doing a show that evening on Friday. And then basically our production company told us the university is closing all in-person things basically. And then it was actually the next day that the email was sent out saying like all events are canceled, classes are going online, and all that jazz essentially.
You mentioned your housemate. Did that mean that you effectively became a household then for, I guess, current situations, or have you since then relocated?
Um, we've since then relocated, especially when it kind of, we were in that house for about a month and a half as we finished off the semester, and pretty much, other than going to groceries and going on walks, we didn't really have too much interaction with the outside world, and no one was showing any symptoms. So when the semester finally finished, everyone did kind of go back to their respective homes, and that house sort of dissolved. But it's an interesting way to think about it. But I guess for that month and a half, we really did kind of become a household. It was really just all of us together. So never thought I was going to become a household at age 20, but here we are.
Okay, Liam, you're with Kai at Trent.
Yeah.
Did you? How was your experience? Pretty well the same as Kai's.
Well, it was very similar how he got kicked out very fast, and there was like a lot of like effects that it had because of that. We left behind like a lot of our stuff, like our mini fridges, stuff for our like support cat, a lot of clothes too, and we were just getting really comfortable there as well, sort of like an actual home. And then we kind of just got kicked out in a day, and we had no choice. And the only compensation we got back for it is like we got our meal plan for the next year, which is nice, but it's not nice enough to compensate for how we lost like a month and a half of being in our home, and how we can actually plan to leave with all our stuff at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I also have a disability, which is autism, and we have all our classes online now. Mm-hmm. And I find it really difficult to learn online and not in person. Like, like with classes that aren't seminars or lectures or anything like that. I learn a lot from seminars compared to, they didn't even really have YouTube videos to learn from.
Oh my goodness. I'd like to go back to you were saying that you had 1 day's notice and you had to leave a whole bunch of your stuff behind, like your mini fridge, what have you. Does this mean that the stuff is waiting for you upon your return, or?
We had to book an appointment with student services to go back to the university, like a time slot that we could go and pick up our stuff. But that was about 2.5 months later.
We got delayed by like a whole month.
Yeah, so that was really frustrating, when you leave all your clothes and all your personal belongings behind. Yeah. It's difficult.
Including stuff for our cat.
Yeah.
And the milk in the fridge that probably wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
Okay, so Matthew, you're at Carleton.
Yes.
How was the experience there? Very similar to what everybody else has had so far?
Yeah, I think it was a little less severe at Carleton because we are sort of a more secluded campus. At least for me, I wasn't kicked out of residence. I was given a $1,000 refund if I moved out, but that's really the only difference. I moved out because I didn't really want to be with so many people on my floor, which student residence is. Yeah. But yeah, you were given a fairly comparable refund if you left.
Okay, that's good. Ian, tell us what happened with you.
I found out first about the university closing down from one of my professors who teaches at Carleton and U Ottawa. So he knows that Carleton, U Ottawa, they often take similar measures whenever something like this comes up. So that was my first class today. It was like 10 a.m. So we're starting class, and instead of learning anything, he just spent the entire class talking about how he wants to handle the class moving forward should the university shut down, which he thought it would. And then right after the class, the university sent out the email saying classes are moving to online after today.
Okay.
So we got to finish off the day. And then I got another email, I think a couple days later, about residence, because I was living in student residence. So we were told that you had a week to move out. And if you moved out in that week, you would get a partial refund, which was the cost for the rest of the year of living in residence. And then 4 days later, so that was a voluntary move out. And then 4 days later, it was like, no, everybody has to leave. You will be refunded. So not as quick a turnaround as Kai and Liam had, but still most of the people who could or wanted to leave left in that first 4 days. I was just staying behind because I didn't want to risk spreading anything around to Kingston, because I knew Ottawa, especially Ottawa, in the downtown, it was kind of a hotspot.
So a lot of you have talked a little bit about how classes. So everybody has gone to online with the hands-on, as Emily has pointed out. It's a little hard to do some of the hands-on training through online or just through webinars. So Kai, anything more to add about how was the experience of doing online learning versus in class? How did that feel for you?
Well, I'm really glad you asked, actually. So, as a student taking a double science major, I think that my experience has been a lot more difficult than I would have hoped first year. A lot of my sciences and things like that for forensics, especially, is very lab based, very in person. And I think, as well as losing time in class, we've also lost the experiences that come along with that. And I think that that's not ideal for students in sciences or students who have technical programs like Emily.
Nick, how about you? Online work in engineering?
Yeah, so it's definitely been an adjustment. I have lab courses as well, so I think Kai kind of hit the nail on the head there. I won't delve too much into it. Sucks to lose. We actually had a final exam in one of our lab courses that they still carried out, which was interesting, but you could definitely feel that there were a lot of technical skills that you just weren't gaining doing it that way. So unfortunate. One big thing that I found tricky for me, having gone through a couple of years of university already, is that it's just really weird not having a set schedule anymore. Even some lectures, I mean, some people will agree or disagree, but some lectures you don't even do, necessarily all your learning there. You have to go back, study the stuff on your own. But just having that regimented time, I find really helps you structure the day and sort of plan how you're going to study and what you're going to do moving forward. And so when that's all taken away and suddenly it's like all self-initiated work that you're doing, I found that to be a pretty tricky adjustment. And, engineering and a lot of majors, there's a lot of work involved. So to suddenly have to schedule your whole day and what you're going to study at what time is definitely a huge adjustment. And I speak for engineers, and I might speak for other people.
Okay, Liam, you mentioned earlier on that you are in the autism band, and therefore the online learning was a big shift for you. If everything continues with the online, how do you think that that's going to work out for you? Or does this mean that you may have to rethink how your education's going?
I really think it's going to damage how well I learn, because I work better with a set schedule, like having something to go off of, because autism does affect my abilities in terms of self-regulation. So that doesn't help as well. And also, we're still in Peterborough where our school is, and we're a short walk away as well. We could walk there within 10 minutes. And the fact that we can't go to classes in person, which we would, since we have summer classes right now as well, it only makes it worse.
Okay. Yeah, I can imagine that really gets frustrating. Matthew, you're studying geography. To me, that sounds like something that could be facilitated well with online. How right or wrong am I?
Yeah, some of my classes are really easy online. I can learn quite easy, but I'm taking a geomatics class, which you need a particular program that's very expensive. It can only be run in certain computers. And we have a lab at Carleton. It's the only place that you can do those. So that entire class, we had 4 labs left, which is over 30% of our mark.
I can certainly.
And he just said, well, we can't do this anymore.
And Ian, how did you enjoy the online learning experience?
Well, I know. So some of my profs just decided to not do online lectures. So one of them just assigned an extra reading based on what he was going to cover. A couple other ones recorded them or just gave us their lecture notes to read. I only had 2 that actually did online lectures, and one of them spent most of the time trying to figure out how it works. The other one was quite good, but I wasn't as motivated to pay attention, just because I knew that the only things I had left to do in any of those classes were my exams, and Ottawa made exams optional for the arts faculty. So I didn't have that motivator of I have exams coming up, so I have to pay attention to keep me on top of it.
Okay. Emily, you mentioned before that one professor pretty well just shut it down, and you had some other ones where you have to do practical. Um, the online for the classes that were left, were they successful at all, do you think?
So one of them I felt was very successful because the course we had like that course, we did have an online aspect to it already. So we'd all be on our laptops or our phones during the lecture where we could respond to questions via an app. So it was already pretty online based. So what we had to do for that one was we'd read the lecture notes instead of the professor telling us about it in person, and we'd still be doing the exact same thing we were doing. Ironically enough, the first online lecture I had with that class was about the plague. So that was pretty coincidental timing. My other classes that I did have online, it was pretty much the same experience as Ian because our exams were optional in the arts department. So if I didn't want to show up to the classes because I have a really hard time focusing if I'm not physically there, there wasn't any motivation to actually keep up with the notes or keep up with anything. So there weren't really many consequences if I didn't show up and read the notes.
Okay. Show of hands, who actually had to write exams? So Kai did. Oh, everybody except for one. Okay. So Nick, let's start with you. You have your engineering exams. How did they go?
So there were none of them were optional. They were all still mandatory. But that being said, at least the ones I wrote, obviously people in different engineering streams would have wrote slightly different ones. So the experience may vary here. But mine kind of felt like formalities, so to speak. So they made us write the exams because there was certain content we still needed to be tested on. And that's just how the course had to finish. But even though they were mandatory, they almost felt optional in the sense that the profs basically told us they're going to be super easy to kind of accommodate for this whole situation. We just need to give these to you. The transition to writing an online exam, some courses did it better than others for sure. Queen's uses this platform called OnQ it's kind of like Blackboard or whatever other universities use where things can be posted. A lot of my profs, what they decided to do is they just, day of the exam, posted a PDF file with the questions. We wrote out our answers on a piece of paper and then had to scan and submit it. And we usually had typically longer than the allotted 3 hours that we normally get for exams to do all that just to account for scanning.
Liam, you had some exams to do. I guess just like with the online learning, it was a totally different ball of wax. And how did it go?
Well, I didn't really have any time to, they didn't give any resources to study for the exam. Usually they'd give you some papers or go here in order to get some exam study notes, but there wasn't any of that online. And unlike with Nick, the exams were just as hard as normal. So it wasn't helpful that way. But luckily, because of how I have the ability to type on a laptop already during exams, it wasn't too different that way, luckily. But it's still, I just didn't have as much resources to study with.
Okay, Matthew, your experience with the exams was?
Carleton already has an online platform to do tests on, so we were lucky in that respects. But there's no way to stop from looking at notes. So all my professors basically said it's an open book exam. They're all multiple choice. We had a lot of time because it was on the online thing, but they basically said there's nothing stopping you from going on Google and just typing in the answers, so they're just it's a formality at this point.
Okay. All right. Emily, did you have any exams that you actually had to write? Because I noticed you're wavering on the hand there.
So actually the class that got cut out completely as soon as it went online, because it was a class where it really couldn't be online. We still had an exam for that, and my professor emailed us telling us you still need to do the exam because it's 50% of your mark. So this one isn't optional, but I did do that one, and then I did one of my other exams. So I did do a couple of them, but for the ones that I just didn't have time to do due to other projects or just wasn't motivated to do, yeah, I didn't have to do that, which was a huge relief.
Yeah, I can imagine. Hopefully, he didn't test you on the material he didn't cover yet.
No.
Okay, well that's good. Okay, so that wrapped up the school year and what have you. I'm sure that you all had plans for the summer to do activities, working perhaps, or anything like that. This has all been thrown asunder. Liam, why don't we start with you? What were your plans and what happened to them?
Well, my plan was to actually get a job, but with how I know Ian, he has a job but can't even go to it. It kind of ruined my hopes that I'd actually get one, which I thought would be very important because you need job experience to get a job in the future, which now I can't get over the like hundreds of hours that I would be able to do it over the summer. Luckily, they have the unemployment insurance, so at least it's not as bad on money. But I can't get like necessary experience that I need to get a job in the future, which I just cannot get.
Right. Matthew, yourself, I understand that you have a slightly different situation.
Yeah, so I had a summer job lined up. I'm in the reserves for the Canadian Armed Forces. And so we normally have guaranteed summer employment, but due to this pandemic, they can't guarantee anything. So I lost my job over the summer, which really sucks because I had it all lined up. So I wasn't looking for another job because I had my guaranteed summer job. And then they just pulled me aside and said, hey, no one who's working right now can't work anymore.
Oh wow! So it's gone for you then, as opposed to just sit at home and wait, and we might call you.
Yeah, they've still have that option, but they said it's very unlikely.
I see. Alrighty, Ian. As Liam started to share with us, you had something lined up for the summer. Tell us what happened and what are you doing now?
Yeah, so I had work lined up at Fort Henry, but unfortunately, they're not able to open. So there goes my in-field experience for setting up for after my degree.
Emily, you're studying theater.
Yeah.
I guess you're not doing any summer theater then.
No, my plans were to get a job because as far as tuition goes, I'm covering the costs of that myself. So it's very important for me to be able to get a job. Last summer I worked 2 jobs to try making sure I could save up enough to afford to pay for tuition and rent what OSAP wouldn't cover. So unfortunately with this, I wasn't able to search for a job because most places here are either closed or when they are reopening, they're only hiring back their employees that were already there. So there isn't really anywhere to go for a summer job.
Mm-hmm.
So the student relief benefit is going to help a lot.
Okay.
Okay,
well, we'll get back to that in a moment. Kai, yourself, any other plans?
Well, originally I had been planning to return to my place of employment that I had been working for the past, 3 years. But that didn't work out, right? But that's okay. I ended up doing summer courses this year, which works out well for me in my degree because I can take all of my math courses online this summer. And then that means that my course load is lighter next semester, which will be ideal.
Okay, so it's sort of a backwards way of working out for you on some parts. And Nick, how about you?
Yeah, so I throw a little bit of a wrench in what we've been hearing. I'm pretty lucky, actually. I decided that since it was my 3rd year, next year I was going to do an internship. So basically at Queen's, you can go through QUIP, the Queen's University Internship Program, and you basically take a year off and work for that whole period of time. So back in December, I got an internship at Invista. And other than my start date getting pushed back from May to July, currently I'm still set to start working and then hopefully have guaranteed employment moving forward. So I'm consider myself super, super lucky in that regard. I have several friends who also got internships kind of abroad, had their housing figured out like somewhere else in the country, and then those fell through. So an internship definitely wasn't a guaranteed way to avoid kind of all the stuff that's come, but I just happened to be extremely lucky.
Plans for the fall. This fall, everybody's going back to school, hopefully. And how do you think it's going to be working out? I mean, there's going to be a different way of presenting classes, apparently. Most will be online or offering mostly online. So how do you think the plans will be for this fall? What do you think you have to do? Ian, why don't we start with you?
So as far as I'm aware, Ottawa is working on opening up and having in-person classes if they can. But if not, it's going to be all online classes.
Okay. And do you think you'll relocate to Ottawa or stay in Kingston?
Fortunately, Ottawa is close enough that if I choose to stay, if they open up as only online in the fall, it's not that bad to be able to transition into in-person classes. But hopefully I can go back up to Ottawa in the fall.
Okay. Emily, yourself, how do you think it's going to work out?
So it's pretty much the same. The email that I received, and I believe Ian got the same one, was that all of the classes will be in person, but if they can be, but there's also an online option. So if you do select the online option and the class turns out to be able to be done in person, you'll be able to not show up to the lectures as you'll have them online.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of my practical classes, I'm trying to, and when I can enroll, I'm planning on putting those ones in second semester. So hopefully by then we'll be able to have in-person exams and my education won't be impacted by the online courses.
Okay.
Ottawa is fairly close to here, but unfortunately, I don't live in residence. I have no plans on living in residence, so I do still need to go looking for apartments and move in the fall. And if I just have to go into quarantine in Ottawa in the fall, I'll do that and have all of my classes online there. But there's a huge fear of I don't want to be stuck in January when there aren't any places for rent, not have a place. So it's a matter of trying to find somewhere now and then just living in there, or staying in Kingston and paying rent for a place I don't live in yet, rather than having no place at all when I do need it.
Right. Kai, you've got a head start on the fall already by doing some of the summer courses. So I guess for you, it's just going to be another semester. Is that what's going to happen?
Well, I'm hoping that things will return more to how they were before the pandemic. According to the email that I received this morning from Trent, the university is going to initiate a 4-stage return to schooling. I'm not sure the exact term that they used, but in the first semester, I think everything will be online. And then following that, according to the feedback that we get from the government and from health officials and things like that, they're going to be moving to have labs and things in person, and then eventually return to normal.
And then Nick, you mentioned that you're going to an internship. So I guess you're just waiting for that to get started.
Waiting for that to get started. Realistically, though, if I wasn't doing the internship, I imagine I would look at taking a reduced course load or something if I were going back to school, just because the online learning didn't really do it too much for me.
Okay.
But I'm pretty lucky again in the fact that
Okay, and Liam, again, I believe you mentioned that you're also doing summer courses, so just fill in the schedule and hopefully keep on going.
Well, yeah, I'm really not look forward to doing 5 times the amount of classes online. And I also was hoping that I'd be able to go to some public theater or to get more experience, because I plan on becoming a drama teacher. So that will be more difficult as well. But that aside, I'm really not look forward to having 5 online classes.
I can understand that. Interesting, you want to do drama, Emily's in theater. For the viewers, in case you haven't guessed yet, these classmates, yes, they were all in the theater drama program at Bay Ridge, so that's why they'll get along so well. Matthew, how about yourself? You're obviously going back in the fall, I suspect.
Yes, yeah. Carleton is pretty similar to Ottawa. They'll do what they can to get in-person classes, but if they can't, it'll be all online. And it'll just be interesting to see if I can even get houses, because renting right now is kind of weird when they want to meet you in person to make sure they like you, but you can't meet in person or even leave the city to view places. They don't want you to do that. So it's kind of hard to find a place right now.
Yeah. All righty. Well, good. Hopefully, good luck with you. A couple people had mentioned the student benefit. I take it most of you are applying for that, and hopefully that'll provide you some assistance. Is that pretty well? I'm seeing nodding heads everywhere. Yep. Okay. Well, that's good. Good luck with that. And we have this. Has anybody, as a result of this experience, thought about maybe changing your area of study, your focus of study, going to something different, or getting out of what you're doing? Has anybody had any thoughts? No? You're all dedicated and committed to your path. All righty.
I'm too far in at this point, really.
See, I'll be honest, I did have about a month where I was considering whether or not I would have to drop out of university because financially and my program being what it is, it's extremely difficult to do online. So I did have the consideration of, would it just be easier to drop out and then reapply in the next year and try doing that, or reapplying when the pandemic's over? But I've changed my mind from that.
So it's a case more of the learning style activity that's going to be happening, as opposed to saying, you know what, I don't think I want to be in theater anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. All righty. Well, that's it. Well, listen, everyone, thank you very, very much for your time this afternoon. It's been really enlightening. It's good to know that you're all planning to go back and keep at it, and nobody's been scared away by this. Everybody's holding up okay? Yeah. Sounds like everybody's doing good. Sorry. Well, listen, once again, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate it, and please be safe.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You too.